Namaste, students. Welcome. Have you ever walked past a small shop and wondered, how does it all work? It might look a little complicated, but I promise you it's not. Today, we are going to learn about business by following a simple story. And by the end, I am sure these big ideas will feel very, very easy.
So, here is our lesson plan for today. First, we'll look at a shopkeeper's main goal. Then, a very difficult decision they sometimes have to make. After that, we will see how getting bigger can actually be cheaper. Then, we will explore different types of markets, like a big fair, a mela, and finally, we will find out who really gets to decide the price of things. Shall we begin? Okay, so for our lesson today, let's meet our friend Priya. She has just opened a lovely little food stall. She is working very, very hard every day. But why is she doing all this? What is her main goal? Well, the answer is very simple. She wants to earn a profit. Now, here is a big official-sounding word, economic profit. Don't worry. The words might seem difficult, but the idea is very simple. I will explain it to you. Let's not get scared by the big words.
You see, it is really this simple. Profit is just the money that is left over after you have paid for everything. For Priya, the money she gets from selling all her food is called revenue. And the money she spends on vegetables, spices, and the rent for her stall, that is her cost. So what is profit? It's simply the revenue minus the cost. It is just like a shopkeeper's daily hisab, his daily accounts. It is what's left in the drawer at the end of the day.
So let's try a very simple question, okay? Just to check if we have understood. If Priya sells food for 500 rupees and she spent 400 rupees on everything she needed, how much profit did she make? Think about it for a moment.
Of course, business is not always good. Some days it rains very heavily and very few customers come. On days like these, Priya gets very worried. She has to make a very tough decision. Should I stay open and wait for customers, or is it better to just close the shop for the day? This brings us to a very important idea. It is called the break-even point. This is the point where the money Priya earned is exactly equal to the money she spent. Exactly. No more, no less. It is just like a cricket match that ends in a draw. No one wins and no one loses. She hasn't made any extra money, but she hasn't lost any money either. But this next one, children, the shutdown point. This is a more serious situation. This happens when Priya is not even earning enough money to pay for her daily vegetables and spices. You see, these are her daily costs. If she cannot even cover the cost of her ingredients, then she has a big problem. Let's look at this chart very carefully. The first line is very easy. If she is making more money than her total costs, she should stay open. She is making a profit, which is very good. Now, look at the last line. If she is making less money than even her daily ingredient costs, she should shut down for the day. It's better to close. But the middle line, that is the tricky one. Here, she is losing some money, but she should still stay open. Why? Because she is earning enough to pay for her vegetables, and she has a little money left over to help pay her monthly rent. You see, losing a little money is better than losing a lot of money. Okay, so a quick question for all of you. Based on what we just learned, if Priya's total sales are less than what she paid for just the vegetables and spices for that day, should she keep her stall open? What do you think is the smart decision? All right, let's move on to a happier situation. Priya's business is doing very well.
Everyone loves her food, and there's a long line of customers every day. So now she's thinking of making her business bigger, maybe a bigger shop or even opening the second stall. Now, this brings her to a very powerful idea called economies of scale. Again, it sounds like a very big and difficult phrase, but trust me, it is something you see in your life every single day. It is the simple idea that sometimes bigger is cheaper. Let me show you what I mean. And that is all it is. It's so simple. Think about it. If Priya buys just one potato, she pays one price. But if she goes to the big wholesale market and buys a whole sack of potatoes, the price for each single potato becomes much, much cheaper, no? It's the same thing for her business. As she gets bigger, she can buy all her ingredients in bulk, and the cost to make each plate of food goes down. So you see, bigger can be cheaper. So as Priya is thinking about making her business bigger, she looks around and she notices something. Not all markets are the same. A market is like a big fair, a mela, There are so many different kinds of stalls and shops. So let us now learn about these different types of markets. First, we have something called perfect competition. Just imagine a big vegetable market. You see so many sellers, right? And they are all selling the exact same tomatoes because everyone's tomatoes are the same. One shopkeeper cannot suddenly say, "My tomatoes are 10 rupees more expensive." Nobody will buy from him. In this market, the market itself decides the price for everyone. Next is monolistic competition. Think about going to a shop to buy soap. There are so many brands, aren't there? But each company tries to make their soap feel a little special. One soap smells like roses. Another one is a different color. One has a famous actor in the advertisement. Because they are all a little bit different, the companies can charge slightly different prices. Then we have something called an oligopoly. This is when there are only a few very big companies in the whole market. The best example for us is our mobile phone companies. There are only a few main ones, no? Jio, Airtel, V. And what do? They watch each other all the time. If one company makes its recharge plan cheaper, the other companies react very, very quickly. And finally, we have a monopoly. The word mono means one. So this is a market with only one seller. And the perfect example is our very own Indian Railways. If you want to travel from Delhi to Mumbai by train, you have only one choice. You must buy a ticket from them. There is no other train company. They are the only one. Very good. So, we have learned about the 4 types of market molasses. Now, let's put all of this information together in one simple table. This will help us see the biggest difference between them. Who is the one that sets the price? Let's read this table slowly together. In perfect competition, like the vegetable market, there are many shops, all selling the same product. So the market decides the price. In monopolistic competition, like with soap, there are many shops, but their products are slightly different. So each shopkeeper has a little control over the price. In an oligopoly, like with mobile companies, there are only a few shops, so they together have a lot of control. And finally, in a monopoly, like the railways, there is only one shop with a unique service, so that single shopkeeper has all the control. And that brings us to the end of our lesson. I want to leave you with one small bit of homework. The next time you or your parents recharge a mobile phone, just stop and think for a moment. How many companies can you choose from? Are all their plans exactly the same? What kind of market is this? When you start looking around, you will see these ideas everywhere. Dhanyavad, thank you, and keep on learning. Namaste, students. Welcome. Today, we are going to learn about something that sounds very big and complicated, the economy. But don't you worry, we will make it very, very simple to understand. Have you ever noticed this? Sometimes it feels like the markets are full, everyone is shopping, people are getting new jobs, and then other times things feel a little quiet, a little slow. Why does this happen? Let's find out together. To understand this big idea, we will look at something very small and familiar to all of us. We will look at 1 year in the life of a Kirana shop owner, just like the one near your house. It is a very simple story, so there's nothing to worry about. Acha, so this pattern of ups and downs has a special name. It is called a business cycle. It sounds fancy, but really, it's just like our shopkeeper's year. Some busy months and some slow months. So what is a business cycle? It's a pattern of upswings, which means things are going up, and downturns when things are coming down. This pattern repeats, but, and this is important, it is not regular. It's like, we know Diwali will come every year, but it's not for the same number of days each time, is it? The good times and slow times in the economy are like that. To make it even simpler, think of our country's economy like a big cricket match. The total score the country makes in 1 year, we call that GDP. And just like in a cricket match, we are always watching the scoreboard to see if the score, the GDP, is going up or going down. So, let me ask you a simple question. If our country's GDP score is going up, is that a good sign or a bad sign? What do you think? It's a good sign, of course. It's like our batsman is hitting sixes. Okay, so this business cycle has 4 parts. You can think of them like 4 seasons in a year. Let's see how these 4 seasons look in our Kirana shop. The first season is called recovery. Imagine the monsoon is just over. During the rains, sales were very low, no? But now the sun is out, people are coming out of their homes, and they are starting to buy things again. So the shop is slowly getting busy. That is recovery. And what comes next? The best time, expansion. This is the Diwali season. Everyone is happy, sales are going up. Everyone is buying sweets, gifts, new clothes. Our shopkeeper is so busy he can't manage alone. He has to hire an extra helper. This is a boom. Now, after the big festival, what happens? The slowdown. This is the post-Diwali season. Look, sales are still good. People are still buying things, but it's not as crazy as it was during Diwali. The speed of growth is slowing down. And finally, we have contraction. This is like the heavy monsoon season again. People are staying home, they are spending less money, and so the shopkeeper's sales are falling. And sadly, because business is so slow, he might have to tell the extra helper that he doesn't have work for him anymore. Let's look at this table together. It makes it very clear. See? In recovery, sales start to increase, so the shopkeeper stops letting people go. In expansion, sales grow very fast, so he hires new helpers. During a slowdown, sales grow slower, so hiring also slows down. And in contraction, when sales are falling, layoffs might begin. Simple, right? This whole circle is one business cycle. Now, a very smart question is, how do we know which season is coming next? Well, just like we look at the sky for dark clouds to predict rain, economists look for clues, or what they call indicators, to see which economic season is coming. So there are 2 types of clues. First are leading indicators. These tell us what is coming in the future. For example, if you are a sweet shop owner and you see many wedding cards being printed, you know that next month your sweet sales will be very high. The second type is lagging indicators. They give us proof of what has already happened.
For example, counting all the unsold sweets after Diwali tells you for sure that the festival season is now over. One tells the future, the other confirms the past.
So, what are some of these real clues for the future? Well, one is building permits. When the government approves many new houses, it's a sign that soon people will be buying lots of furniture, paint, and things for their new homes. Another is the stock market. You can think of it as a big scoreboard that shows what big investors think will happen to companies tomorrow. And also, new orders for factories. When factories get lots of orders, that's a great sign for future jobs and growth for everyone. Now, there is one more very important person in our story, the banker. You see, bank loans can play a very big role in these economic seasons. There is a saying that goes like this: easy bank loans can make the good times better and the bad times worse. This means that when things are good, loans can make them even better. But when things are bad, loans can sometimes make them much, much worse. Let's go back to our shopkeeper. When his sales are booming during the Diwali season, he goes to the bank. The bank is very happy to give him a loan to make his shop bigger. This makes his Diwali season even more successful. But when it's the monsoon season and sales are slow, the bank gets worried. They think, will he be able to pay it back? So they make it much harder for him to get a loan.
So, tell me, children, think about it. When is it easier for our shopkeeper to get a loan from the bank? Is it during the busy Diwali season or during the slow monsoon season? Exactly. It's easier during the Diwali season when business is already good.
Now, you might be thinking, teacher, this is a nice story about a shopkeeper, but why does this matter to me? Well, it matters a lot because these economic seasons affect your life every single day.
How? Well, when you grow up and look for a job, it's much easier to find one during the Diwali season, the expansion. Also, the prices of things you buy, like biscuits or milk, might go up a little when the economy is booming. It's also easier for your family to get a loan to buy a new bike or a house when the economy is strong. And even the interest you earn on your savings can change depending on the economic season. You see? It touches everything.
So now you are all experts. You know the seasons of the economy. So my question to you is, what signs will you look for when you go outside today? Will you look to see if new shops are opening or if construction is happening? Start looking for these clues around you. You will be surprised by what you find.
Hello everyone and welcome. Today, we are going to learn about the government's money plan for our whole country. It has a big name, fiscal policy. It sounds very complicated, no? But I promise you, the main idea is something you already know from your own homes. So let's begin.
To understand all this, first, let's forget the big difficult words. Just think about your own family's budget. Every month, money comes in, like your papa or mummy's salary. And then money goes out, for the house rent, for school fees, for buying dal and sabzi, right? Well, a country's economy is just like that, but on a giant scale. So this fiscal policy is really just the government's giant household budget. Simple, isn't it?
So, here is our plan for today. First, we will understand what this money plan really is. Then, we will look at the two main tools the government uses, just like a mechanic has his tools. After that, we'll see how the government can make the economy go faster. We will also understand what this national debt is that we hear about in the news. And finally, we will see why doing all this is actually very tricky.
Okay, so let's start with our first topic. What is this government money plan? What is fiscal policy?
See, at its heart, fiscal policy is about two very simple things. First is money in. This is how much money the government will collect from everyone. This is done through taxes. And the second is money out. how the government will spend that money on things we all need, like roads, hospitals, and schools. That's it. It is all about balancing the money in and money out for the entire country. Now, the government is not the only one looking after the economy. Think of it like a cricket match. You have two batsmen at the crease, okay? One batsman is the government. Its job is to use fiscal policy, that is, deciding on taxes and spending. The other batsman is our country's central bank, the RBI. It uses a different bat called monetary policy. Its job is to manage how much money is available and things like interest rates. They both have different jobs, but they are playing for the same team to make sure our economy does well.
Okay, so a small question for you. Based on what we just discussed, who do you think decides how much tax we pay? Is it the government or is it the central bank? Yes! You are absolutely right. It is the government's job. Very good.
Now let's look a little closer at those two main tools, money in and money out. It is just like your local Kirana shop owner. He has his notebook now. In one column, he writes down all the money coming in from sales. In the other column, he writes all the money going out for expenses. The government does the same thing, just for the whole country. So, where does the government's money in come from? Well, mostly from taxes. You must have seen this yourself. When you do a mobile recharge or buy a chocolate, you see a small amount added called GST. That is a tax. Then there is income tax, which working people pay from their salaries. All these different taxes are the main income for the government.
And where does all this money go? This is the money out part. The government spends it on things for all of us. You see that new highway being built? Or the government school in your area? Or the hospitals? This is all the government spending money to make our lives better. All right, let's check if we have understood this. If the government is building a brand new hospital, is that money in for the government or money out? Yes, perfect. That's money out. It's an expense. Shabash. You are all learning this so well. You know, managing the economy is a little bit like driving a car. Sometimes the road is empty and you need to press the accelerator to go faster. But other times there's a lot of traffic and you need to press the brake to slow down, right? The government uses fiscal policy just like an accelerator and a brake for the economy. So how does this work? Well, if the economy is going very slow, like a lazy Sunday afternoon, people are not spending money, shops are empty, the government can press the accelerator. This is called expansionary policy. It can do two things. It can cut taxes, so we all have more money in our pockets to spend, or the government itself can start spending more money, maybe by building a new bridge, which creates jobs for people. Now, the opposite is the brake. If prices of everything are rising too fast, the government can apply the brakes. This is called contractionary policy. It can increase taxes or spend less money to cool things down a bit.
Let's think about this. A recession is when the economy is very, very slow. So to fight this slowdown, to press the accelerator, should the government increase its spending or decrease it? You got it. It should increase spending. This puts more money into the economy and helps everyone. Excellent thinking.
So, what happens when the money out is more than the money in? When the spending is more than the earning? Don't worry, this happens in our homes also sometimes. Let's understand this properly.
This situation is called a budget deficit. Let's go back to our shopkeeper friend. Imagine in 1 year, his total expenses were 100 rupees, but his total sales were only 80 rupees. So he spent 20 rupees more than he earned. That 20 rupee gap for that 1 year is his deficit. It's exactly the same for the government, but with much, much bigger numbers.
So how does this 1-year deficit become a big debt? It's simple, really. To cover that 20 rupee gap, our shopkeeper has to borrow money. Now, what if this happens again next year, and the year after that? He has to keep borrowing. The national debt is the grand total, the sum of all the money borrowed over many, many years, all added up together. So let's be very clear on this. Another small question for you. Is the national debt from just one single year, or is it from many years added together? Yes, that's the main point. It's from many years, all combined. The deficit is for 1 year, but the debt is the total over a long time. You've understood this very well.
So, we have learned about the tools, the accelerator, the brake. It seems quite simple, no? But in reality, managing the economy of a huge country like ours is incredibly complicated. Let's see why. The biggest problem is time. Everything takes time. Imagine there is a big pothole on the road outside your school. First, it takes time for the government to even find out there is a problem. That's called a recognition lag. Then they have to make a plan, approve the money, and send the workers to fix it. This also takes a lot of time. That's the action lag. And finally, even after the road is fixed, we have to wait and see if it has actually helped the traffic. That is the impact lag. By the time one policy starts working, the economic situation may have already changed completely.
So let's quickly go over our key takeaways from today's class. First, fiscal policy is simply the government's budget plan for taxing and spending. Second, it's used like an accelerator or a brake to speed up or slow down the economy. Third, a deficit is just a shortfall in 1 year. Fourth, debt is the total of all the borrowing over many, many years. And finally, and very important, any changes the government makes will always take time to show results. You have all learned so much today.
So, I will leave you with a final question to think about. The next time you watch the news and they talk about the government's budget, what is one thing you will listen for? Will you see if taxes are going up or down? Or will you check where the government is planning to spend more money? Think about it, because now you can understand a very important part of how our country works. Thank you for being such wonderful students. Namaste.
Namaste, everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to learn about something very important. It's a big-sounding name, monetary policy. But don't worry, by the end of our lesson, you will understand it very clearly. It affects everything, you know, even the price of your lunch. So, let me ask you a question. Have you ever noticed that the samosa from the shop near your house, maybe last year it was 10 rupees, and this year it is 12 rupees? Why does this happen? It seems like such a small thing, but the reason is connected to something very big that controls all the money in our country. So today, we will find out why. Here is our plan for today. It's very simple. First, we will understand what is monetary policy. Then we will meet our central bank. After that, we'll look at the 3 main tools it uses. Then, what is the main goal? Price stability. And finally, how this all works in the real world. Ready? Let's begin. Okay, our first topic. What is this monetary policy? The best way to think about it is like this. Imagine it's the thermostat for our country's economy. You know, for an AC. Sometimes the economy gets too hot, meaning prices are rising too fast for everyone. And other times, it can get too cold, meaning businesses are struggling and growth is slow. Monetary policy is just the remote control we use to set the temperature to be just right. So here is the official definition. It's all the activities a central bank does to manage how much money and credit is flowing in the country. It is just like how your parents manage the household budget every month. They make sure there's enough money for everything, for school, for food, for savings, but not so much spending that it becomes a problem. This is the same thing, but for the whole country. It's a big balancing act. So, who is doing this very important job of balancing everything? Well, that brings us to the main person in charge, the central bank. It is like the guardian of all our money.
In our country, India, this guardian is the Reserve Bank of India, or the RBI. I'm sure you've seen its name. Just take out any currency note from your pocket. See? It's written right there. You can think of the RBI as the captain of our country's financial team, a very, very important job.
So what all does the RBI do? Well, it does many things. It is the one that prints our money, our rupees. it is also the main banker for the government of India. And this is interesting. It is the banker's bank. That means it is like the headmaster for all the other banks, like SBI, HDFC, and all the others. It makes sure they follow the rules. It also takes care of our country's savings of foreign money, like US dollars. And if there is ever a very big problem, the RBI steps in to help everyone. So basically, the RBI is the main supervisor for everything related to money in India. Is that part clear? It's the headmaster of all banks. Good. Now let's see what tools it uses to do its job. All right, now for the most interesting part. How does the RBI actually control the economy's temperature? Well, it has a special toolkit. You could even call it a magic kit. Let's open this kit and see the 3 main tools inside. Now, when you read these names, open market operations, policy rate, reserve requirements, they sound very difficult, I know. But please don't worry. The idea behind them is actually very simple. I will explain each one with an everyday example. First, open market operations. Just imagine the RBI goes to a big vegetable market, a mandi, and all of the banks are the shopkeepers there. If the RBI wants to give more money to these shopkeepers, what will it do? It will buy a lot of vegetables from them, and the shopkeepers will get cash. Now, if the RBI wants to take money away from the market, it will sell vegetables to them. The RBI does exactly this, but instead of vegetables, it buys and sells something called government bonds from the banks. It's just a way to put money into the system or take it out. The second tool is the policy rate. You will often hear this on the news as the repo rate. This is very easy to understand. Imagine you want to borrow 100 rupees from your father. If he says he will charge you a very high interest, you'll probably borrow less, no? But if the interest is very low, maybe you will borrow more. The RBI does the same thing with the banks. It sets the interest rate for them to borrow money. This rate is very powerful. And the third tool is the reserve requirement. This is like when your mother gives you 100 rupees of pocket money, but she tells you, "Beta, you must save 10 rupees in your piggy bank. You cannot spend it." The RBI sets a similar rule for all the banks. It tells them that for all the money people deposit, they must keep a certain fraction in reserve and not lend it out. By changing this rule, the RBI controls how much money the banks have to give as loans. So, now we have seen the 3 tools in the RBI's kit. But what is the main goal? Why are they using these tools? Well, the single most important goal is price stability. The RBI uses these tools to make sure that the price of our samosa doesn't suddenly jump from 12 rupees to 20 rupees. The goal is to keep prices steady for all of us. In India, the RBI has a target. It tries to keep inflation, which is just the speed at which prices are rising, at around 4%. Now, you might ask, why not 0%? Well, a little bit of price rise is actually healthy for the economy. It encourages everyone to spend and invest, which keeps the country growing. So 4% is like the perfect temperature, not too hot and not too cold. So how does this actually work? It is like a chain reaction. First, the RBI changes its policy rate. Because of that, all the other banks change their interest rates for loans, for buying a home or a car. This then affects our decisions. We decide if we want to borrow and spend more or less. When many people do this, it changes the total demand for goods in the country. And finally, that affects the prices and inflation. So you see, it's one change that slowly goes through the whole economy. So the RBI has 2 main moves. Think of it like driving a car. When the economy is slow, the RBI can press the accelerator. This is called expansionary policy. It lowers interest rates to encourage people to borrow and spend. But what if the economy is going too fast and prices are rising too much? Then the RBI will press the brake. This is called contractionary policy. It raises interest rates to slow things down. Accelerator and brake. Simple, isn't it? All right, our last section. In the real world, things are a little more complicated. It's not as simple as just pressing a button. The RBI is not working alone, you see. It's a team effort. The RBI, which handles monetary policy, has to work with its most important teammate, the government. The government handles something called fiscal policy, which is all about taxes and government spending. Now, they must play together like two batsmen in cricket. They must coordinate. For example, if the RBI is trying to speed up the economy and the government is also spending a lot, then you get very high growth. But if both are trying to slow things down, growth can become very low. So, teamwork is very important.
And here is another very big challenge. The RBI can guide, but it cannot force anyone to do anything. You know the saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink? It's like that. The RBI can lower interest rates to make borrowing cheaper, but it can't force the banks to give loans. And it can't force us to take loans and spend money. So much depends on how people are feeling, their confidence. The RBI can only influence things. It can't control them completely. This makes its job very difficult. Which brings us to our final thought for the day. This is the biggest challenge of all. Imagine for a moment that you are the RBI governor. How would you find the right balance? On one side, you have to keep prices stable, so our samosa doesn't become too expensive. On the other side, you have to help the country grow so there are more jobs and opportunities for everyone. If you press the brake too hard, you might hurt growth. But if you press the accelerator too much, prices might go out of control. Finding this perfect balance is a very, very tough job, something for you to think about. I hope you all enjoyed our lesson today. Thank you.
Hello and welcome. Today we're diving into a really big, fascinating topic, geopolitics. Now, I know it sounds super complicated, but I promise you, it's really just the story of how our world is put together. Kind of like the hidden rules that decide everything from the price of your phone to the big headlines you see on the news. So, let's pump back the curtain, shall we? Okay, just think about this for a second. Before your car ever showed up in your driveway, the individual parts that make it up went on this absolutely incredible journey all around the globe. And believe it or not, that journey reveals the secret operating system of our entire world. Just look at this list. It's wild, right? This isn't just a car, it's practically a global citizen. It's this beautiful symphony of global cooperation. I mean, imagine the logistics of it all. A designer over in Japan has to completely trust that their grand vision will work with a part that's being made in Germany, which will then be installed by a worker down in Mexico. This intricate dance happens for almost everything you own. It's a huge, interconnected system that we all rely on every single day. So what makes it all work? What are the rules, What are the agreements and the kind of unspoken understandings that allow a German company to trust that its parts are going to fit perfectly into a car being built in Mexico, all based on a design from Japan? Well, that brings us to the very heart of this explainer. The best way to think about geopolitics is to imagine it's the planet's operating system. Like Windows or iOS for the world. It's the set of rules, the relationships, and the power dynamics that are always running in the background, allowing everything from international trade to that text you just sent to happen smoothly. So at its core, geopolitics is really all about how geography writes the rules of the game. Things like a country's location, whether it has access to the ocean or valuable resources, and even who its neighbors are. These factors massively influence the choices it makes on the world stage. It's the framework for a global game where everyone is a player, from presidents all the way down to the companies that make our phones. And right at the heart of this global operating system, there's one fundamental question that every country has to ask itself every single day. Do we work together with other countries, or do we try to go it alone? That choice, right there, defines their relationship with pretty much everyone else. And you can see the two paths so clearly here. On one side, you've got cooperation, which is all about building bridges. Countries agree on common rules, they trade freely with each other, they share technology,
That's the world that makes that global car possible. But on the other side, non-cooperation is all about building walls. The rules are all over the place, borders are tight, and relationships are based on you hit me, I hit you back. It's a much, much harder and more expensive way for the world to operate. Right. That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If cooperation is so great, why doesn't everybody just do it all the time? Well, the answer is that every country has its own national interest, its own unique set of goals and priorities. And sometimes what's seen as good for one country isn't seen as good for another. And that's where things start to get really complicated.
So, to help make sense of all this complexity, experts use this really simple but super powerful framework. It helps us categorize how countries behave based on those choices we were just talking about, how open they are, both politically and economically.
This simple grid breaks it all down. So just think of two sliders. The first one, going up and down, measures economic openness. How much does a country want to trade and connect with the world? The second slider, going side to side, measures political teamwork. How much does it want to cooperate on global rules? And where a country lands on these two scales gives us four basic behaviors we see all the time on the world stage. All right, first up, down in the bottom corner is autarky. This is the ultimate go-it-alone strategy. We're talking maximum isolation, a country trying to build its own walls and be totally self-sufficient. It's an incredibly difficult path, and honestly, it often leads to a country getting left behind economically. Then you have hegemony. This is like the dominant power, the one that wants to lead the pack. It's happy to play the economic game, but it wants to set its own rules. It uses its massive influence, like, say, controlling a vital resource like natural gas, to make other nations play by its script. Now, in the total opposite corner, you've got multilateralism. This is the all-together now approach, and Singapore is the perfect example. It has very few natural resources of its own, so its entire success story is built on being wide open to trade and cooperation. For a country like Singapore, deep global integration is its engine for success. And finally, there's bilateralism. You can think of this as a middle ground strategy. So instead of joining a big club with lots of members, a country focuses on making very specific one-on-one deals, like a free trade agreement that's signed between just two nations. It's a more selective, more targeted approach to cooperation. Okay, so we've got this complex system with all these different national strategies playing out, but what happens when these relationships get tense? What happens when that global operating system comes under stress? Well, that's when we run into something called geopolitical risk. So in simple terms, geopolitical risk is just the chance that some political event somewhere in the world could disrupt business as usual for everybody. It's the risk that the smooth, interconnected system that we all rely on suddenly hits a major bump in the road. Now, this risk isn't just one thing. It actually comes in three main flavors. First, you've got event risk. Think of an election or a big referendum. The date is on the calendar, we all know it's coming, but the outcome is a total mystery. Then there's exogenous risk. This is the bolt from the blue, a sudden shock that nobody saw coming. And finally, you have thematic risk. These are the slow-burning issues that build up over years and years, like climate change or the threat of cyber attacks. Let's look at an event risk in action: Brexit. Everybody knew the vote was happening, but the result absolutely shocked the markets. The very next morning, the consequences were immediate and pretty brutal. UK stocks dropped over 3%, and the British pound? It plummeted more than 8% in a single day. A predictable event, but with an unpredictable outcome that led to very real financial pain. Okay, now let's look at a true shock, an exogenous risk. The Fukushima disaster in 2011 came completely out of nowhere. There was no date on a calendar, no warning at all. And the market's reaction was pure panic. Japan's stock market cratered more than 6% in one day, as the world just struggled to grasp the human and economic scale of the tragedy. So you might be thinking, okay, that's interesting. Stock markets, international politics, But what does any of this have to do with me? Well, it turns out it has everything to do with you. Let's bring this all back home. See, these big global tensions don't just stay over there. They show up directly in your life. A supply chain gets disrupted in Asia, suddenly the price of that new laptop you wanted goes up. A political crisis erupts in Europe, it can actually make your retirement savings wobble. Geopolitical risk can even decide which movies you get to stream or what kind of technology becomes available to us. It all comes back to us in the end. And that leaves us with a big unanswered question for our time. Our world is more connected than it has ever been, which brings us enormous benefits, but it also creates new vulnerabilities. So, which path are we going to choose? Are we going to choose the one that builds more bridges through cooperation, or are we going to choose the one that builds more walls through conflict? The answer to that question is going to define the world that we all live in. Thanks for watching.
Hello, Bacho. Welcome. Today we are going to learn about a very big topic, how countries trade with each other. Now, I know it sounds very complicated, but don't you worry. We will go through it step by step, very slowly, and make it super simple.
Exactly. No tension at all. This is not about memorizing difficult things from a textbook. Think of it like listening to a story, a very interesting story of how the things in your house from all over the world came to be there. So, are you ready? Let's begin.
Just look around you right now. The mobile phone in your hand. Where is it made? Maybe Korea? And the spices in your mother's kitchen? They probably come from Kerala, right? Why is that? Why doesn't one place just make everything? This simple question, Bacho, is the starting point for understanding all of world trade. Okay, so let's start with a very, very simple example from our own beautiful country. Once you understand this, the whole big idea of global trade will become very clear, I promise. Think about it. Punjab is famous for its wonderful wheat for our rotis and parathas, and Kerala is famous for its fragrant spices for our delicious curries. Now, Punjab is the best at growing wheat, and Kerala is the best at growing spices, so they focus on what they do best. Then Punjab sells its wheat to Kerala, and Kerala sells its spices to Punjab. This way, everyone in India gets to enjoy the best of everything. Simple, no? This is the main idea of trade. Now let's take that simple idea of Punjab and Kerala and just make it bigger. Apply it to the whole world. Countries do the exact same thing. And when they do, there are some really big benefits for all of us. Let's see what they are.
So, what are these big benefits? First, we get things for better prices. If a country is very good at making something, they can make it for a lower cost. Second, look at the variety. We can buy so many different things. Phones from here, cars from there, fruits from another place. Third, it means better quality. All these countries are competing, trying to make the best product so that we will buy it. And finally, when all this buying and selling happens, it helps our whole country's economy to become stronger.
So the most important point to remember is this. Trade is good because it gives us more choices and better quality things, and many times for a lower price. It's like a giant mela or a giant bazaar for the whole world, where every country brings its best items to sell.
Now, this world market is wonderful, but like any game, like cricket, there have to be some rules. It's not a complete free-for-all. Sometimes governments put some restrictions in place. Let's learn about these rules. They are very simple.
Okay, the first rule is a word called a tariff. It sounds like a big, difficult word, no? But it's not. It is just a simple tax. When something comes into our country from another country, the government adds a small tax to it. Let me explain with a simple example.
When you travel on a big highway in a car, you have to stop and pay a toll tax. A tariff is exactly like that toll tax, but it is for goods, not for cars. So if a toy from another country comes into India, our government puts this little tax on it. This makes the foreign toy a little bit more expensive in our shops.
Okay, a question for all of you. Think carefully.
If the government puts this toll tax, this tariff, on chocolates coming from another country, what will happen to their price in our local shop? Will the price go up or will it go down? Yes, you are right. The price will go up. Very good.
All right, let's learn the next rule. This one is called a quota. Now, this is not a tax. A quota is all about the number of things, the quantity. It is a strict limit on how many items can be brought into the country.
The best way to understand this is imagine you are at a temple for a special occasion, and the priest announces the special Laddu Prasad will be given only to the first 100 people in the line. That is a quota, a limit. After 100 people, no more Laddus. In the same way, the government might say, this year we will only allow 1,000 special laptops to be imported. Once 1,000 laptops come in, that's it, stop.
So, another simple question for you. If the government puts a quota on imported video games, does that mean we can go to the shop and buy as many as we want? Yes or no? No, of course not. A quota means there is a limit. Shabash!
Look at this table. It makes everything so clear. First, we have the tariff. What is it? It's a tax, like our highway toll tax. Then we have the quota. What is that? It's a limit on the number, a quantity limit. And you see a third one here called a subsidy. A subsidy is like a helper payment. Our government might give some money to our farmers to help them. This makes it easier for them to sell their wheat in other countries. So a tax, a limit, and a helper payment. See? Simple.
So, countries trade, and they have rules. But you know, sometimes a few countries decide to become good friends, like a team in school. They make a special group to make trading among themselves very easy with fewer rules. We call these teams trading blocks.
Now, this teamwork between countries can become deeper and deeper, just like friendships. It happens in steps. At step 1, they form a free trade area. This just means the friends in the team agree not to charge any tax on each other's things. At step 2, a customs union, they also agree to have the same tax rules for any country that is outside their team. Step 3 is a common market, where it gets even closer. Now people from these countries can go and work in each other's country freely. And the final step, step 4, is an economic union. Here, they are like one big family, using similar economic rules, almost like one big country.
Phew! We have learned so many new things today. So, let's just take a minute to quickly remember the most important points from our little story today.
First, we learned why countries trade. Just like Punjab and Kerala, they specialize so we all get better things at better prices. Second, we learned that there are rules. The two important ones are tariffs, which is a tax, and quotas, which is a limit. Third, we saw how countries can form teams or blocks to make trading with friends easier. And finally, the big point, all this trade helps a country's economy grow and become stronger. But now for a very important question. We said trade is good for the whole country, but is it good for every single person in the country? Well, not always. Think about it. Imagine there's a small factory in your town that makes shoes. But now cheaper shoes start coming from another country. What might happen? Our local factory might not be able to sell its shoes. It might have to close down, and the people working there could lose their jobs. This is the difficult part of trade.
So, what is the answer to this problem? This quote gives us a hint. It says the winners can help the losers. What does it mean in simple words? It means that the country as a whole earns so much extra money from trade that it has enough money to help the people who lost their jobs. The government can use this money to give them training for a new kind of job or help them find work in a different factory. This way, the whole country still benefits, and we also take care of the people who are hurt. And this leaves us with a final thought for you to take home. We know trade can make a country richer, but how do we make sure it is fair for everyone? How do we make sure that the benefits are shared with all our people? This is a very big and important question, something for all of us to think about as we grow up. Thank you so much for listening so carefully today.
Namaste, students, and a very warm welcome. Today, we're going to talk about something very, very interesting, something that connects your own pocket money to the entire world. Now, I know it might sound a little complicated, but I promise you, by the end of our time together, it will all make sense. Are you ready? Chalo, let's begin.
So let me ask you a question first. Have you ever seen something you really, really want online? Maybe a new video game or some nice shoes, and it's from a company in America. You see the price, and it has that dollar sign next to it. You get all excited. But then you look in your wallet, and what do you see? Only rupees. And here is the problem, isn't it? The game you want costs $50, but in your wallet you have 4,000 rupees. Now, you can't just send rupees to the shopkeeper in America, right? They need dollars. So, what do? How can we turn our Indian rupees into American dollars? To solve this little puzzle, we have to go to a very special place. It's not a shop you can walk into or a mall. It's a huge global market where money itself is bought and sold. This brings us to our first topic. Let's take a look at this giant money market. This special place is called the foreign exchange market, or for short, you can just say FX market. Now, the easiest way to imagine this is to think of a giant mandi. Like a sabzi mandi where people buy and sell vegetables? Well, the FX market is like a mandi for money. People from India go there to sell their rupees and buy dollars, and people from America go there to sell their dollars and buy maybe Japanese yen. It's one big worldwide market for all the currencies. And when I say it's big, I mean it is huge. Can you believe about 6.6 trillion US dollars are traded there? And that's not for a whole year, that's every single day. That number is so big, it's hard to even picture it in our heads. It just tells you how important this market is for the entire world. Okay, so we have this giant money market. But if we want to buy dollars with our rupees, how do we know the price? How much do we have to pay? This brings us to our next section, where we will understand the price of money. So, what is an exchange rate?
Beta, it's actually very simple. Everything we buy has a price, right? For example, you know that 1 liter of milk costs, say, 55 rupees. That's its price. Well, in the exact same way, money from another country also has a price tag. So the price for $1 might be 83 rupees. And this special price for money is what we call the exchange rate. Now, in finance, this has a proper, slightly fancy name. It's called the nominal exchange rate. Don't worry about the big words. It's just the official price tag for a currency on any given day. So when you hear on the news, the dollar is at 83 rupees today, they are just talking about the nominal exchange rate. Simple, isn't it?
Chalo, let's try a quick little math problem. If one single dollar costs 83 rupees, then how many rupees would we need for that $50 video game? It's just simple multiplication, right? We take 50 and multiply it by 83, and we get 4,150 rupees. See? You understood it perfectly. It's just like finding the cost of 50 packets of milk.
But here is a very interesting part. This price, this exchange rate, it keeps changing. Sometimes we say the rupee has become weaker. What does that mean? Well, think about your mobile recharge. Maybe last month for 100 rupees you got 2 GB of data. But this month the company changed its price, and now for the same 100 rupees you only get 1.5 GB. The 100 rupee note is the same, but its power, its buying power has gone down. A weaker rupee is exactly like that. Your rupee now buys you a little bit less of the dollar.
And that brings us to the next very logical question. Why? Why do these prices for money change? Why isn't $1 always equal to 83 rupees? In this section, we'll find out why the prices change, and we'll learn about two systems, fixed and floating.
You see this happening with other things all the time, right? Maybe you hear your parents talking about how the price of petrol went up again, or your mother says that tomatoes are so expensive this week. The price of money changes for similar reasons. but different countries have different rules for how much the price is allowed to change. To make it very, very simple, just imagine there are two kinds of shops. One type of shop is where you can bargain. The price changes all the time, depending on how many people want to buy something. This is like a floating rate. The other type of shop is like a big showroom with a sign that says fixed price. There is no bargaining. The government decides the price and tries to keep it the same. This is a fixed rate. So, in that floating system, the price of the money is decided by the millions of people buying and selling in that giant money mandi we talked about. And because of that, the price can change every day, even every minute. Countries like the USA use this kind of system. But in a fixed system, the government is in charge. The government says, okay, the official price for our money will be this much. And then it works very hard to make sure the price stays stable and doesn't change too much. This can be very good for businesses because they can plan for the future, knowing the price will be the same. Now we come to the most important part of our whole discussion. You might be thinking, okay, teacher, this is all fine, but how does any of this affect my life, me personally? Well, you'll be surprised. It affects you in many, many ways. So let's ask that big question. Why should you, or why should I, care if the rupee's value goes up or down against the dollar? Let's see how it connects directly to you. First of all, it affects your own plans and dreams. Remember that video game? If the rupee gets weaker, that game will now cost you more than 4,150 rupees. Or maybe your family is planning a holiday abroad. If the rupee is weak, your money will buy less in that country, making your whole trip more expensive. And for those of you who dream of studying in another country, this is very, very important. The cost of your college fees can go up or down a lot because of the exchange rate. And it also affects things in your own house, your daily expenses. You see the price of petrol changing? A big reason for that is because India buys oil from other countries and we pay for it in US dollars. So if the dollar gets stronger, we have to pay more rupees for the same barrel of oil. The same thing is true for electronics. The price of that new phone or laptop you want is connected directly to the exchange rate. So let's put it all together now. Today, you have learned your first big, important idea in the world of finance. It's an idea that connects you, sitting right here, to the entire world economy. I want you to really think about this sentence. The exchange rate is the invisible thread connecting your wallet to the entire world. It's like a thread you cannot see, but it is very, very strong. It connects the money in your pocket to decisions being made in faraway places like New York or London. It's a very powerful connection. And to understand all of this, all you had to learn was one very simple idea, that money has a price, and that price can change. Understanding just this one thing is the first, most important step you can take to understand how the world's economy works. And all of you have taken that big step today. You should be very proud of yourselves. Shabash! Now, before we finish, I have a little bit of homework for you. Don't worry, you don't have to write anything. It's just a thinking question. What would happen if, tomorrow, the rupee suddenly became twice as strong? Imagine that $1 now only costs about 42 rupees instead of 83. What things in your life would suddenly become cheaper? And would anything become more expensive? Just think about it. We will talk about it next time. Well done today.
Namaste, students. Welcome to our special money class. Today, we're going to talk about how money travels all around the world. It might sound very complicated, but I promise you, we will make it very, very simple. It's going to be fun.
Now, I know, big words like finance or exchange rates can sound a little bit scary, no? But don't you worry at all. The ideas behind them are actually quite simple. We will go very slowly, and we'll use examples from our daily lives to make everything clear.
So, let's start with a little story. Imagine you see the perfect new mobile phone online. You really want it. But the shop is in America, and the price is in US dollars. You only have rupees. So how does that work? How can they accept your money? This is the first puzzle we are going to solve together today.
To solve our puzzle, we are going to learn a very simple trick. I call it the currency junction trick. It's a clever way to find a price when there isn't a direct path.
Think about it like our Indian railways. You know how it works, right? If there is no direct train from Mumbai to Chennai, what do? You take a train to a big junction station, maybe Delhi, and then you change trains from there. Currencies work in the exact same way. To get from one to another, sometimes you have to pass through a big junction currency like the US dollar.
For example, let's say we want to find out how many Canadian dollars 1 euro can buy. We can use our two-step junction method. First, we take our euros and change them into our junction currency, the US dollar. Then we take those US dollars and change them into Canadian dollars. See, it's a simple two-step journey, just like changing trains.
And you don't need to be a maths wizard for this, I promise. To find the final price, it's just a matter of multiplying two numbers together. That is all there is to it. Very simple.
So, how does the maths work? Well, the market gives us two important prices. The first one is this, 1.3020. This is simply the price of $1 US in Canadian dollars.
And the second price is this, $1.17, 1.1701. This is the price of 1 euro in US dollars. So we have our two numbers. Now we just multiply them together. And there it is. We get our answer, 1.5235. So this means 1 euro can buy you 1.5235 Canadian dollars. See? We have found the hidden price.
Now, in the big world of finance, this junction trick has an official name. It is called a cross rate. It is just a fancy term for an exchange rate between two currencies that we calculated using a third common currency, our junction currency.
So a quick question for you. If we need to find a hidden rate, what is the most important thing we need? Yes, we need that junction currency that we can use to connect them. And in the world market, that junction is very often a big currency like the US dollar.
Very good. Now, what if you don't want to buy that phone today? What if you want to buy it in, say, 3 months, but you are worried the price will change? Well, you can plan for that too. You can book your currency in advance. Think about booking train tickets for Diwali. We book them months before, maybe in August, no? Why do we do that? To lock in a good price before it goes up. Well, believe it or not, you can do the exact same thing with currency. You can agree on a price today for a purchase that will happen in the future.
And the official name for this is a forward exchange rate. It is a simple promise. We agree today on a price, but we will actually exchange the money 1 month, 3 months, or even 1 year later. Just like booking that train ticket in advance.
But is the future price always the same as today's price? Not always. Sometimes we might have to pay a little extra, and sometimes, if we are lucky, we can even get a discount. Let's understand this now.
Look at this table. It's just like a price list from a shopkeeper now. The spot rate is the price for today. Then you can see the price for 1 month from now, 3 months from now, and so on. To get that future price, we just add these little numbers with the plus sign, the forward points, to today's spot rate. Easy.
Now, when the future price is higher than today's price, we call it a forward premium. It is just like buying a train ticket during the busy festival season. You have to pay a little extra. And if the future price is lower, it is called a forward discount. It's like you got a great off-season discount on your ticket.
A good deal. Okay, a question for my smart students. If the forward points are negative, with a minus sign, does that mean you are getting a discount or are you paying a premium? Think about it. Yes, exactly. It means you are getting a discount. You're getting a better price by booking ahead. Well done. Now, for our last and very important lesson for today. With so many people buying and selling all the time, how do we know the prices are fair? Well, there's a special magic that keeps the market honest. Let me tell you another story. Imagine you go to the fruit market. One shopkeeper is selling delicious mangoes for 100 rupees. The shop right next to him is selling the exact same mangoes for 120 rupees. What would a smart person do? Of course, you will buy all the mangoes from the first shop for 100 rupees and immediately sell them at the second shop for 120 rupees, making a quick profit of 20 rupees on each mango. This clever trick is called arbitrage. And in the world of currency, computers and very smart people do this thousands of times every second. Because of this, any small difference in price disappears almost instantly. It is like a strict headmaster walking through the market, making sure every shopkeeper has the same fair price. This is what keeps the market honest. So, let's quickly remember what we learned today. First, we learned about cross rates, our junction trick to find a hidden price. Then, we saw how forward rates are like booking a train ticket for currency in the future. We learned that sometimes you pay a premium and sometimes you get a discount. And finally, we saw how arbitrage acts as the market's referee, keeping prices fair for everyone. The most important thing to remember is this, children. Finance is not about scary numbers or difficult charts. It is just about simple stories and ideas. And once you understand the story, the whole idea becomes clear. So, I will leave you with a final thought. Now that you know a little bit more about how money travels across the world, what is one thing you have always wanted to buy from another country? A book from London? A game from Japan? That world is now a little more open to you. Thank you for listening so well today.